The snowstorm had settled, but the air remained thick with silence. The rescue team stood beside the white horse, its once tormented body now free from the parasitic beetles that had infested its flesh. The creature, though weak, had regained some strength, its deep black eyes reflecting both gratitude and exhaustion. The team, their work done, stepped back as the horse slowly rose to its feet. Snowflakes clung to its long mane as it turned toward the vast wilderness, pausing for a moment as if contemplating its fate. Then, with quiet resolve, it trotted into the thickening mist, disappearing beyond the frozen trees. The rescuers watched in silence, a mixture of relief and unease settling over them. Something about the entire situation felt unnatural. They had seen injured animals before, had saved countless lives from the merciless cold. But this was different. The holes in the horse's body, the beetles burrowing deep inside, the way it had remained eerily calm. It was something they couldn't explain. They exchanged glances, unspoken questions hanging between them. Eventually, they gathered their equipment, packed up the medical supplies, and mounted their snowmobiles. The mission was complete, but a lingering sense of unfinished business followed them as they rode back toward their station. The forest was silent as the horse moved through the trees, its breath visible in the cold air. It didn't gallop, didn't rush, but walked with an odd sense of purpose, as if drawn by something unseen. The deeper it ventured, the darker the forest became. The moon hung low, its light barely piercing through the skeletal branches. The snow beneath its hooves was undisturbed, untouched by any other creature. It was as if nothing else lived here. Then the sounds began, a faint clicking, distant at first, but growing louder with each step. The horse paused, ears flicking. The noise was familiar. It was the same sound the beetles had made, the tiny, unsettling chitter of their legs against its skin. But the rescuers had removed them all, hadn't they? The clicking grew into a low, rhythmic hum, like thousands of wings brushing against each other. The horse's muscles tensed, and for the first time, fear crept into its dark eyes. It turned its head sharply, searching the shadows. The forest, once silent, was now alive with movement. The trees swayed despite the absence of wind. The ground, solid just moments ago, seemed to shift beneath the weight of unseen things. Then they emerged, not just the beetles from before, but something larger. Their shells gleamed in the pale moonlight, their eyes dark and empty. They crawled from the trees, from the ground, from places they shouldn't have been able to hide. The horse took a step back, its breath quickening. The beetles didn't attack. They didn't rush toward it. Instead, they waited, surrounding it in a slow, deliberate circle. The horse's legs trembled. Its body, though free from the visible infestation, still felt wrong. Something inside it shifted, a deep crawling sensation just beneath the skin. The holes the rescuers had cleaned were no longer there, but a strange pressure built within its flesh, like something waiting to emerge. The clicking grew deafening. The horse's breathing became erratic. It staggered, eyes wide with panic, its body twitching violently. And then it began. A sharp, tearing sensation spread through its muscles, followed by a sickening crack. The horse let out a strangled cry as its skin split open, not from wounds, but from something pushing outward. The holes had never truly disappeared. They had only gone deeper, burrowing inside where no one could see. Now they reopened, wider than before, stretching unnaturally. The beetles did not move to attack, because they had never been separate from the horse. They had always been a part of it. From within the torn flesh, something larger than any insect began to emerge. Long, spindly legs unfurled, slick with blood and frost. The horse's body convulsed as the thing inside it forced its way out, its exoskeleton gleaming under the moonlight. The clicking became deafening, no longer just a sound but a pulse, a rhythm that matched the dying beats of the horse's heart. The rescuers were miles away by then, unaware of what they had set free. The snow had already begun to cover their tracks, erasing any evidence of their encounter. They would return to their station, file their reports, tell themselves they had saved a life. But in the depths of the frozen forest, something else had awakened, and it was hungry. The storm had returned by the time the rescue team reached their station, thick snow falling in sheets that erased their tracks almost instantly. Inside the small wooden outpost, the fire crackled in the iron stove, its warmth barely pushing back the cold that had settled deep into their bones. They removed their heavy coats, shaking off the ice that clung to them, and exchanged uneasy glances. No one spoke at first. The mission was over, but something about it lingered, clinging to them like frostbite. Mark, the team leader, finally broke the silence. "I don't know about you guys, but that wasn't normal." Anna, the team's medic, nodded, rubbing her arms. "That horse, the holes in its body, the way it barely reacted. I've never seen anything like that before." Jonas, the quietest of the three, sat at the edge of the room, staring into the fire. He hadn't said much since they had returned, and when he finally spoke, his voice was low. "We shouldn't have let it go." The other two turned to him. "What do you mean?" Mark asked. Jonas shook his head, his fingers tightening around the cup of tea he had barely touched. "It didn't act like an animal. It didn't panic. Even when we removed those things, it barely flinched." He hesitated, then added, "I don't think we saved it. I think we let something loose." A heavy silence settled between them. The wind outside howled against the wooden walls, rattling the windows. Anna forced a laugh, though there was little humor in it. "Come on, Jonas. You're acting like it was cursed or something." Jonas didn't answer. He just stared at the flames, lost in thought. Miles away, in the depths of the frozen forest, the snow-covered ground was disturbed by something unnatural. The white horse, or what remained of it, stood still among the trees, its breath coming in slow, heavy puffs of steam. Its body was no longer whole, its flesh torn apart in places where something else had pushed its way out. The thing that had been trapped inside it was free now. The creature loomed in the shadows, its exoskeleton dark and wet with the remnants of its host. It was larger than any insect should be, its segmented body shifting as it tested its new existence. Its many legs moved with unsettling precision, leaving deep, unnatural marks in the snow. The clicking sound that had once come from the smaller beetles was now a deep, resonant hum, vibrating through the trees. It was learning, adjusting. The horse took a step forward, its body jerking unnaturally, as if it was no longer in control. The thing inside it hadn't fully left. It was still there, buried within the muscle, stretching itself through veins and nerves, manipulating the host like a marionette. Then the thing, began to move. It walked in the direction of the outpost. Back at the station, Jonas couldn't sleep. He sat up in his bunk, staring at the wooden ceiling, the winds howling filling the silence. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the horse's empty stare. The feeling of unease had only grown stronger since they had returned. Something wasn't right. He swung his legs over the side of the bed and stood up, careful not to wake the others. Grabbing his jacket, he stepped outside. The cold hit him instantly, but he barely noticed. The snow had thickened, covering everything in a fresh layer of white. The landscape was silent, untouched. Or so he thought. Then he saw them: footprints, hoof prints, leading from the forest's edge toward the station. They weren't there before. His stomach tightened. The horse. It had come back. Jonas turned to wake the others, but before he could move, he heard it, a slow, deliberate clicking sound. It was faint, just beneath the wind, but unmistakable. His breath caught in his throat. The sound was coming from behind him. Slowly, he turned. Standing just beyond the reach of the station's dim exterior light was the horse. Its white coat was still stained with patches of dried blood, But something was different now. Its body seemed wrong. Stretched, distorted. Its breathing was slow, too slow. Its head was tilted slightly. Its black eyes locked onto him. Jonas swallowed hard. "Easy, easy," he whispered, taking a cautious step back. The horse didn't move. It just stood there, staring, watching. Then, without warning, it twitched. A violent, jerking movement that sent a sickening crack through the air. Its legs shifted unnaturally, bending in ways they shouldn't. The clicking sound grew louder, vibrating through the ground. Jonas took another step back, his instinct screaming at him to run, but his body refused to move. And then the horse opened its mouth, not in a neigh, not in a sound of distress, but wide, too wide, its jaw unhinged, stretching far beyond what was natural. And from within, the clicking sound erupted in a deafening chorus. Something inside was moving. Jonas stumbled backward, scrambling for the door. He slammed into the wood, fumbling for the handle as the horse took a step closer. The thing inside it was pushing, pressing against the skin, as if it wanted out. Jonas yanked the door open and threw himself inside, slamming it shut behind him. His breath came in ragged gasps as he pressed his back against the wood. Mark and Anna shot up from their bunks. "Jonas," Mark said groggily. "What the hell are you?" "Shut up," Jonas hissed. "Listen." The three of them went silent. For a moment, there was nothing but the sound of the wind. Then the clicking began again. This time, it was right outside the door. Anna's face paled. "What is that?" she whispered. Jonas shook his head, his hands trembling. "The horse that's back." Mark frowned, moving toward the window. "You're not making any sense, Jonas. The horse is gone." He stopped mid-sentence, because he saw it too. Through the frost-covered glass, the outline of the horse stood motionless in the snow, its body twitching in small, unnatural jerks. But it wasn't alone. Shadows moved behind it, dozens of them, smaller, scuttling forms. The beetles. They had followed. Mark backed away from the window. "We need to leave. Now." Anna grabbed the radio. "We can call for help." The power cut out. The lights flickered once, then died, plunging the station into darkness. The clicking outside grew louder. Then the first thud hit the door. Hard. Something was trying to get in. Jonas grabbed the emergency flashlight, clicking it on just as the second impact rattled the wooden frame. The entire cabin shook with the force of it. "They're not going to stop." Anna breathed. Mark gritted his teeth. "Then we don't wait for them to." He moved quickly, grabbing their survival packs and throwing one to Jonas. "There's a back exit. We take the snowmobiles and head for the old ranger station on the ridge. It's got reinforced doors. If we can make it there." The third impact shattered the window. A flood of movement poured inside, dark shapes skittering over the broken glass. The beetles. Jonas didn't hesitate. "Go. Now." They tore through the back door, snow biting at their faces as they sprinted toward the snowmobiles. Behind them, the station groaned under the weight of something massive forcing its way inside. Jonas didn't look back. He didn't need to, because he knew the horse wasn't a horse anymore, and it was coming for them.